Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. Stand out, don't fit in. Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. Today I have the real pleasure to be speaking with Steve Bode. Steve is an entrepreneur. He holds a master's degree in business administration. He is an author and just published his first book, Enlightened Master, Apprentice. He has a life goal of helping others to succeed and create their dream lives, and he promises to show us the way to having more energy, finding peace, solving all our life's problems, and never getting sick again. In his words, he has this not so crazy idea that he hopes will help change the world. So, Steve, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to be speaking with you today.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is quite an honor, and I'm very excited to share what I believe will really help everybody, anybody that's thinking. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve, I want to ask with a little bit of background from you. So if you could give us a brief overview of who you are, and I also want to ask you of maybe a milestone moment, a key defining moment that has led you to where you are at the moment.
I am originally from Ohio, and when the day after I graduated college, I moved to California. I had big dreams of making it big, and I was going to be a big real estate entrepreneur, and just life was going to be wonderful, living on the beach and stuff like that. So I moved out here. This is quite a while ago now, but I started my first business, and I had no idea what I was doing, and it was going along pretty well, and I'd get super busy with things, but I wasn't elevating up out of anything. I was making a living. And then after 9/11, that whole thing fell apart, and it was a tough few years. But I tried to start another business, and then it's like any young entrepreneur, I had my failures and my growths. But it seemed like I was doing all the right things. I was hustling, I was working long hours, and I had innovative ideas, and I was hustling. But I was still just having like little blips of, okay, it's going okay. And then, something would happen and I'd fall back down. So then after I recovered from another downturn, it was, one of those 0 years, like 40, 50, it was actually when I was about to turn 50. And I'm like, so what am I doing wrong? I was looking at all the things, all this time I was under the impression I was doing the right things. And so I should have been taking off. So I took the reverse side. I like, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing that's wrong? And so I systematically started to cut out things that were not helping, and everything from, watching TV to, maybe sleeping in later than I should be, or skipping meals. And then as I started to drop things that weren't working, I replaced them with things that were, and that was really started to tip the scale. So, your life is a balance of your inflow and outflow, right? So everything you're taking in, you there's always some kind of balance. So I was raising that balance higher and higher by the things that were coming in were more beneficial to what was going out, and vice versa. So it's always teeter-tottering. But I figured out how to raise it up instead of just doing this thing at the bottom. And it was really when I started eliminating everything that wasn't helping, everything from thinking too much to the quality of things that I was taking in. Like I was a newsie. I'd wake up in the morning and I turn the news on. I leave for work at 9, so there's 3 hours in the morning, and I'd get home at night, and then I'd watch the news for another 3 hours, and then I'd watch a movie or something like that. So all this influx was not helping my outflow. So I literally dropped all the bad stuff coming in and replaced it with good stuff, and it raised everything else up.
That's
That was
interesting.
a long answer to your short question, but
And
yeah, that was the tipping point.
right. So when you started replacing those things or those activities that were not serving you, or that influx that you said, did you notice an accumulation of the effects, like in terms of what I'm trying to say, it didn't happen. How long did it take before you started seeing visible results in your progress from when you started doing these things?
Pretty quickly, I would say within 30 days.
Oh,
And,
really?
I was working, I would never have breakfast, and I'd work through lunch, and then I'd come home and have a huge meal. And that huge meal would make me tired, and then I'd just fall asleep. Right. That was kind of a typical day. And just doing something simple like starting to work out. I exercise every morning and I have breakfast every morning. And that alone started to create a base where my thinking was clear. And then as my thinking cleared up, I was more cognizant of that spinning brain, that monkey mind where you jump thought to thought. And then I started to clean that up. And, my life was starting to improve slowly. And then it started to really skyrocket up.
That's what I was
So
asking, whether there was any exponential curve after
yeah,
a while.
and now it's really starting to take a rocket ride up, and I don't have problems anymore. I would say a problem is something, a situation that you need to take care of, right? And the more you start dwelling on something and you get stuck in these thought loops and you're eating up mental energy, but because you're in a loop, you suck up so much mental energy that problem's never going to get solved anyway because you're stuck in a loop, right? So any problem is solved very quickly if you have all the right data. But if you're only using the data that you now have in your head and you're spinning, one, you're sucking up all your mental energy and your time. So the thing's never going to get solved unless you stop the spinning mind and go get more data, right? Go pick up a book on, how to speak more clearly, or how to run a business, or how to have a better relationship with your wife. You need more inflow data, before you start thinking about it again. So what I learned to do is literally stop. Like if you have a problem, if you can't solve it immediately, and that takes a lot of practice, learning to stop that thing, because it's a long time habit. And then go read a book, or get some data, talk to a mentor or something to get more information, and literally set a timer. Okay, like in 25 minutes, if I can't solve this thing, then stop thinking about it and go get more data.
That's very interesting what you say. And I'll just repeat that so I can make sure that I understood what you just said properly. So you said that when our tendency, when we're faced with a problem, we call them problems, but they are situations. I prefer the word like that.
Yeah.
We get stuck into an endless thought loop. We keep on, if we can't solve it, we keep on trying with a loop in our mind to solve it. And your suggestion is, after a little while, you said 25 minutes or something like that, if we can't solve it, it means that we have inadequate information, and the solution is to acquire more information, books or mentors or something like that. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So we humans evolved because we're really, I don't want to say if we're good, but we're obsessed with solving problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like, something comes your way, we have to think it through. But some things simply aren't solvable. But we're stuck in that, like, I have to figure this out. And as an example, you're driving down the freeway and somebody cuts you off, like, and it wasn't your fault. So you start blaming, and that guy's an idiot, and you try to catch up to him, show him how angry you are. But you have no idea what really happened. You had this intention of driving down the road, and he interfered with your intention, right? So it disrupted your thinking. So your solution is to get angry at the guy. It's his fault. And you started on a thought loop, all the drivers are idiots, and I hate that guy, and blah 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 blah, and now it ruins your whole day when you could just, and that's a problem that just doesn't have a solution. Just realize that there is no solution here. It's a non-event. Somebody's vehicle moves slightly in front of you. You tap your brakes, and we're done. So, but you have to keep in mind, the brain has a finite amount of mental energy every day. That's why you start to get tired as the day moves on. So if you are getting involved in that thought loop, you are spending your precious mental energy on something that is not solvable. So, it's kind of like pick your battles is a long term.
I'll come back to this, the energy that we spend on our mental processes, because I think it's a very important topic. I just wanted to clarify I understand this unsolvable problem that you mentioned about with the example of the other car in the road. I want you to share an example of, let's say that I have a problem that I'm trying to solve, and after half an hour I'm still stuck and I need to find more information. Can you, what kind of a problem could that be? Let's an example, please.
I'm going to move on to, my philosophy is, first quiet the mind a little bit. And it's, scientists have come to the conclusion that we create 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day. Mm-hmm. Right. And 90 to 98% of them are the same ones you had yesterday and the day before. So there's a massive amount of wasted energy because you're just spinning. The first step is just kind of quiet the mind and slow down. And then you have a lot more mental energy to that's your conscious mind. The subconscious is taking in all data, just everything. Like the ratio I have written down up here. So the conscious mind processes 40 chunks of information per second. Mm-hmm. The conscious mind processes 11 million per second. So there's a lot more data out there that the subconscious mind is giving you, but you can't see it because your brain's spinning. Mm-hmm. So once you quiet your mind, now you have access to everything else is around you. So, back to the car example, you're all angry at this guy because your subconscious mind is spinning about what he just did to you. And you don't see there's a police car sitting right next to you, watching you get angry, speeding up, right? Because you're blind to him because you're stuck in your conscious mind. So once you learn to just slow all that spinning, talking to yourself mind, you start to see everything else around you. Mm-hmm. And solutions to problems, just like, oh, there's the solution to my problem, or there's the solution to my problem. So you're accessing a much bigger data bank by slowing down your talking mind.
Okay. And what methods or techniques do you suggest we can use to quieten or slow down the mind?
The first step is just really be cognizant of, I think, the difference between thoughts and talking to yourself. And what I'm referring to is the talking to yourself. Most of that stuff just really isn't necessary. And I use the example in my book of I look at my dog and I hold his face in my hands and I say the words, I love you to my dog. Mm-hmm. Whereas he's not saying, I love you too, Steve. He is, he's smelling me and looking at me and feeling my hands on him. And he's just feeling the whole thing. He's not using words. He's not slowing down his brain to say, I love you too, Steve. Or, some qualifying thing like, I'd love you more if you gave me a cookie, right? There's not that going on in his head. And, he's happy. He's happy all the time because he's not, occupying his brain with, oh, I have this problem. Steve loves me, but he won't give me a cookie, right? It's simple. It's lovely. It's beautiful. So, the first thing to answer your question is just to stop talking to yourself. When you find yourself do it, make some trigger like, okay, I caught myself talking to myself. Just slow that thing down. Okay. It'd be like sitting in your car with the gas pedal all the way down and you're not in gear. Just take your foot off the gas and just slow. It's like meditating, but all the time, all the time. So once you learn to slow down a little bit, and then say you are about to endeavor in something, I you remember those old Western movies when, the posse had to cross the river and there was a ferry, but it was the kind where, there's a rope across the river and everybody gets on and you pull yourself across.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a problem, you cast a rope out to the future event, it being done, right? And you imagine that future. Let's say you have to clean your garage, right? It's been bugging you, and your wife's bugging you to clean it, and you're standing in the open garage door, and you imagine yourself, zipping through being super efficient. You grab the trash bag and you kick the soccer ball up in your hand, you throw it in the basket, and you're just being super efficient. This is taking the unknown of tackling this big project. You're mapping it out in your head ahead of time, so the back off of I don't know what I'm getting into is gone, right? So now your mind has a path, and now once you map it out in your head, then you endeavor in the project, like you do this and super efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not as much as you mocked up in your head, but you do it much faster. And then after you're done cleaning the garage, you go back and review how that happened and polish out that memory as if you were like a superstar, and you just nailed everything you grabbed. It was as heavy as you thought, and you picked it up, and you were stronger, and all the trash went in the trash pile, and all the good stuff got organized exactly, and it was just boom, 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 boom. But you have to polish out that memory, so the next time that anything like that happens, you have a memory to pull from of you being like a superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then the next step is to broadcast that out even further into the future, so you have something more to pull yourself into. So you're getting rid of all the unknowns in the future. So say you've now just nailed your garage and it's just super clean. It looks awesome. But you've always had this idea in the back of your head that you'd start a business from your garage, but you couldn't because it was all messy. Mm-hmm. So now you imagine yourself like 5 years in the future, you've got a cool office and it's booming and everything. And, you're about to become a millionaire and you're hiring people left and right, all because you took out the fear of figuring out how to tackle this big project called your garage. So it's stringing your past memories along and your future, what will become memories, in a line that's in alignment with your goals, instead of just kind of buzzing around your house and your kitchen and your life.
I understand. That's using a future projection that we imagined of ourselves. It's certainly useful to pull us towards that direction, for sure. Let me tell you, because I read that you are an avid reader and you read or listen to about 300 books a year. So was that a result of that change in your habits that you did, the mental clarity and the time that you found?
That was probably one of the biggest factors, because I talked about that balance of inflow, outflow. Yeah. I radically changed what I was inflowing. And, I started to listen to some books, when I stopped watching TV and I switched to listening to audiobooks. And that influx of good info started to spring new ideas, and, that I could pull data from a much wider gamut of data. And, for my other business, I come up with the most creative things, like, oh yeah, that guy said that in that book, and that guy said that in that book. And, and then the whole picture makes more and more sense, because I have a lot of data to pull from, instead of finding the one book that had that one sentence that like, oh, that sounds like a good sentence. But, people say, what's the one book I should read, and what's the one paragraph I should pull out? But that, even if there is a magic sentence or a magic word, the context isn't there unless you get a lot more data to pull from. So I went crazy on listening to books, and that's probably the single biggest thing that moved this thing along so quickly for me.
Mm-hmm. And you listen to most of the books rather than actually reading them.
It's easier for me. I'm on the road a lot, so I listen to them in the car.
Right. Okay.
Also, I'm more of an audio person than reading. But there's pros and cons to both. I think reading, you're more likely to be really concentrating on the words, and you might get it more. But Audible, so we talk. I think this is correct. 100 words per minute, but you can understand at 700 words per minute. So I crank up the speed on the Audible.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So I can go through a book twice as fast than I might if I were reading it. So little secret there.
I have tried it personally, but because I'm a very visual rather than auditory myself, I struggle to concentrate with when I listen to audiobooks.
So
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. So I'm concerned about that too, because I want to get the data, but I think because the subconscious mind is processing 11 million bits of information per second. Even if I, say I'm driving and I'm concentrating on the car in front of me, but I'm listening to a thing, I'm pretty sure I'm getting it I'm getting the information. Plus, I'll listen to a book if I like it 2 or 3, 4 or 5 times to make sure I repeat it. Whereas if I read it, I'm much less likely to read a book a few times. But, there's pros and cons.
I suppose. And what you said, I don't know if that is a fact. I would love to believe that, even if your conscious mind is not paying all that attention, your subconscious mind still gets the messages of the book.
It'd be really hard to prove because, you have to be in your conscious mind to think, what's out there.
Yeah, but, absolutely. It is. Yeah. But certainly I reread the books, not the whole book. What I do personally, I read and underline the passages or the phrases that are interesting to me. And then when I finish or at a later date, I will read only the parts that I have underlined. So that usually takes an hour or so to go through what really made an impression.
Even the fact of going through the physical motion of highlighting something makes you remember it more because, you're concentrating. There was an interesting study done on students that took notes and students that didn't take notes. So, they had 2 groups, people that took the notes and people that didn't. And then the people that took notes always got better test grades. But, the critics would say, well, they just studied their notes. But as soon as they took the notes, they took them away from them, but they still got better test results because just the act of writing them out, you're triggering more mental activity.
There's better memory retention. I think I've read that study or something similar that 24 hours after we just hear something, 70% of it is gone. Whereas if we take notes, we retain much more than that. And if we review the notes after a few days, we even increase the retention of the knowledge.
On that note, when I am trying to solve a problem, I talk to myself out loud because now it's going in the ears and I'm more likely to use concise sentences, good grammar, and the spinning mind or the monkey mind jumping from thought to thought is much less likely to happen because, I speak in, sentences, noun, verb. It's much more structured. So, if you're trying to solve a problem, it's much more like shooting an arrow than a shotgun where it just sprays all over. And, that's very useful. People think you're a little strange if you walk around talking to yourself, but it's very useful. I live near the beach and there'll be a long beach and I'll tell myself, I'm going to solve this problem by the time I get to the other side. And I'm talking to myself out loud the whole time. People are like, oh, he must be on the phone or like headphones or something like that. No, I'm just talking through a problem. Yeah. But it's nice to hear it, because it's going in your ear versus just spinning around in your head. And it's easier to keep track of the thoughts.
It's fascinating. That's actually something I'm going to start
doing
myself. Because you certainly articulate in a different way when you speak.
Yeah.
rather than when you're just in the head. Absolutely, that's amazing. uh, Steve, tell me about your book. So I wanted to ask, first of all, the title. I want the title
Oh,
gets someone's attention. It certainly did for me, because Enlightened Master, Six Apprentice. For me, when I will tell you my thoughts, when I first saw the words Enlightened Master, my mind brings the image of a spiritual teacher like Osho or Muji or Eckhart Tolle, someone like that. So what's your the reason for choosing this title or the
um,
reference to the book?
yeah, I love the title, and I'm not suggesting that I'm that guy, but I am trying to be that guy. But so the premise is that your future self, or the reader's future self, that spiritual being off in the future, has achieved that state, and
Ah.
he is able to see the past person when he looks back, and he has sent this book out into the past to his past self to say, hey, you've got an enormous amount of potential, but you need to start doing some of these things. So for the reader to get to an enlightened state, he's got to listen to his future self, and
Hmm.
it's a communication between your future self and your present self to say, clean up your act, and you've got the potential, you've got what it takes. So here's what you need to do. So that's the reasoning behind the title.
So the Enlightened Master is our future self that pulls us, and the apprentice is our present self. Is that
Exactly.
all right?
Yes,
That's fascinating.
I did. And some things I think I'm going to revise in the book, because I put a little bit of too much of Steve Bode in there, where I got I got carried away. So it was Steve's future self writing back to, but I think for anybody picking up the book, that got a little confusing. So
Mhm.
we'll iron that out a little bit better. But I'm learning at this too. So.
Sure, sure. Um, Let me go back then to something we started talking earlier, and I diverted the conversation. It was the energy that we spent on our mental processes, which you say that it would be much better off if we take it from there and redirect it to other options. And you actually mentioned the immune system, or to your bodily functions, or whatever else. So is that something that can happen automatically once we free our energy, or our mental processes from that? How did you call it? The thought loops, the endless thought loops. Does that happen automatically? Does that energy go elsewhere, or do we have to
Um,
direct it somehow?
no, I mean, it's more available, and this is a conjecture on my part, but it is physics. Everything that you eat, 20% of all your energy intake goes to this little thing that's in this little space right here,
Mhm.
and the 70,000 thoughts per day are spinning around in here, which everything you eat, 20% of it goes to maintain that spinning, spinning, spinning. And let's say your coworker comes to your office with a cold, or the COVID-19 or something, or something horrible, and you are spending, let's say it's even higher, let's say it's 25 or 30% of your energy intake is going to you're really stuck in thought loops. And that's a big, huge energy draw that is not being used to fight off infections. So if you can really slow, like 98% of your thoughts are just spinning, 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 and 70,000 thoughts a day. What if just hypothetically you could lower it to 35,000 thoughts, and maybe it's 50-50, 50% on maintaining your life, and 50 towards creating a new life for your life goals or something like that. That's a
Mhm.
lot more energy, physically, for your body to give towards fighting off infection. You know, the viruses and germs. They're tiny little things. So your body has 75 million trillion, maybe it's trillion. I should probably figure out those numbers. But the proportion of cells, but I'm not sure if it's 75 trillion cells. That's compared to maybe a half a dozen of the bacteria against your 75 trillion. If your body and your soul is all in alignment and quiet and not wasting a tremendous amount of energy, bacteria just simply don't stand a chance.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Tell me, there was something else that I was reading when I was having a look about your book, and it was about removing distractions, which obviously with so much information, I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but there is so much input of sources in the digital age. So distraction is just a beep of the phone away, or it's always there. And that makes it, of course, difficult for us to focus on a task. So is that removing distractions? What's your advice or recommendation on that?
It's being in those environments is a habit, and you can break old habits, but it's because your subconscious mind is taking in everything, and your conscious mind filters a lot of that stuff out. You can, once you start to realize how much noise is coming in, just cut out as much as you can. I see students studying in coffee shops. They sit there and just all the noise is buzzing around. They're like, oh yeah, I'm fine. But I bet if I were to accidentally bump their table or something, they would obviously know it, because they're more awake to all these other things. But if you were to find a really nice quiet place, like in a library or at your home, with all the external noise cut out, and you were to just tap that person on the shoulder, they'd go, oh, they'd be so startled, because they were really focusing on their data. They were really getting it. So the more you can cut out just any noise, the more you are able to focus on the thing that you're focusing on. Like these are even noise canceling headphones. I wear them all the time, like in my house. So I can't hear the neighbor's air conditioner, or I can't hear the dog barking, or even my own refrigerator. And it allows me, I've just cut out that much more distractions, where when I'm concentrating and somebody taps me on the shoulder, it scares the living Jesus out of me, because I'm super duper focusing on the thing in front of me, and I get a lot more done. Something that might have taken 2 or 3 hours, I might do in 10, 15 minutes, because I'm all in. And then when I'm done, I'm much more relaxed, and I can do whatever I want.
That's great. I'm making a note about the noise cancelling headphones. I haven't tried them, to be honest. What I do sometimes to help with my concentration, there is an app. It's called Brain FM. I don't know if you've heard of it. It plays some music with some frequencies, some sound frequencies that tune your brain into, let's say, beta brain waves, so to help you become more focused. So, but I will certainly try the utter silence, because I'm a person that really appreciates peace and quiet. I don't like noise at all.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Nudge Club, that online. Actually, I will let you share what it is and what's the purpose of it, and what it is.
So, in addition to the book, we have an app called Get Nudged, which nudges you to stop your, the monkey mind, the spinning brain, just to interrupt your thoughts, and get you to focus more on the good stuff in your life. So the Get Nudged app, you can find it on Android or Apple, and it just sends you random good vibe messages. And you can pick from different categories, but it might say smile at your neighbor, or hug your kids, or buy your spouse flowers on the way home. And you can pick from work or just mindfulness or different categories, and just a random message pops up on your phone. And if you like that message, you swipe right, which means you'll get it again eventually. If you swipe left, you'll never see it again. So some may or may not apply to your life, but the more you use the app, the more it's in tune to what you're doing. And it's kind of it's based on priming, which back to my cleaning the garage or casting out what you want your future to look. It's priming. So if, say, you walk out your front door and your neighbor smiles at you, you're more likely to smile at somebody else, right? Those things are contagious. So the idea is that you've been primed with the app of, smile at your neighbor or hug your kids or something like that. It stuck that idea in your head. So, now it'll become more of a part of your life. And it's random because, if you're expecting it, you're more likely to say, oh yeah, I got that message yesterday, or I already stemmed. The original idea started, I used to put little Post-it notes around my house, like have a great day, or call your mom, or call my mom, something like that. But once that Post-it note was there all the time, and you become blind to it after a little bit.
I know all about it.
Yeah. So this is the solution to that, where the messages are different colored and they're random. So when you see it, it's new for you, and you're like, oh yeah, maybe I do need to call my mom. And you're more likely, because it's come out of the blue, versus you see that Post-it note on your computer or on your refrigerator or something like that.
Amazing. That's great. Very interesting.
Yeah, thanks.
Steve, let me also ask you some quick fire questions as well.
Yeah.
What does personal development mean to you?
I think the first thing is to find out where you are and like what your situation is, and then eliminating things that are not helping and doing more of the stuff that are. So it's just, back to that outflow, inflow. That's what'll raise you up, instead of, only concentrating on, I need to think positive, which is great, but you have to eliminate the negative thoughts too. So, that balance comes up. I think because like what I had mentioned earlier about, how we evolve, we're problem solvers. Personal development is solving the ultimate problem. How can I develop me so I can increase my life and thereby everyone around me?
I love this. Solving the ultimate problem. That's so true. That's so true.
Yeah, I like that too. I'm going to write that down myself.
Steve, if you could go back in time and meet your 20-year-old self, what's the one piece of advice you would give him? I suppose you would tell him that now you are Enlightened Master and he should listen to you.
Yeah. So I talked about, mapping out, cleaning the garage, right? You cast that out in the future, and then when you're done, you look back in your past and review it. And this is maybe one of the most powerful things that I've developed. I'm working on a new book that will have a course, and the largest part of the course is to map out your past. Like, where you lived, what years you went to what school, what friends you had, and just really clearly as you can, mapping out a straight line to your history. And you can take as much time as you want. But once you're done, then you take chunks of that time, like say your last year of high school. And you pick a situation, and then you polish out that memory as if you were an Enlightened Master, for example, or just a better person, or you stood up straighter, or you were a little bit funnier, or you got up the nerve to ask the pretty girl out to the school dance or something like that. And by doing that, so today you run your life by your past decisions, right? The past conclusions, opinions, things. they've all mapped up like who you are today. But if you go back and kind of refine those decisions as, it wasn't my fault, or whatever conclusions that you remake, and you keep on remaking it, until you are the better person in your past as far as your memories are concerned. So now today, you go out into the world as if you were the star of the football team, or, you always had your act together in high school. So now today, you're still that guy, but you're even bigger, stronger, better.
Right. So what advice would you give then to 20-year-old Steve if you could tell him one thing that could potentially change his life?
For me, I would say, don't stop watching TV. It's just a massive waste of time. I was a real TV head. I was almost I grew up on the TV. My mom was like, okay, we don't have a babysitter, so just sit there. But bless her heart, she's a good person. So.
I agree with the TV. I've watched way too much TV in my younger years. Now I haven't watched in 10 years. I don't have a TV, so it's. And sometimes I wonder how on earth did I find the time to watch TV, because I'm never bored, and it's never that I don't have anything to do. And even if I had a TV, I wouldn't find time to watch it. But anyway, I suppose you get used to it, don't you?
Well, it's designed to be hypnotizing. I mean, it pulls on. We're visual people. We like to see these pictures move by. And it's better than having memories that you look at, because you can watch TV and like, oh, isn't that cool? And when I stopped watching, I had withdrawals. I felt kind of weird, queasy, and it made me realize what it was doing to me. That was not good. So that's the one thing I would tell myself.
I realized that, and if you just need to watch a young child. When they watch TV, they are completely absorbed by that. There's nothing, everything else is stopped, and they were really focused on the screen. And now that I don't watch, I know, I've been there, but now I don't watch, I don't have a TV. Sometimes when I go out, for example, and there is a TV somewhere in the background, and if I look at it, then I realize, because all of a sudden I get magnetized by it, and I start looking and looking and looking, and think, wow, right. Before I know it, half a minute or a minute would go by, and I'm just, but now because I'm not used to it, I can break that easily and not carry on with it.
Yeah.
Steve, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it and change something in the world as it is today, what would you change?
This is going to sound kind of weird, but the human ability to talk to ourselves with words, right? You can still think, but without words, because that's the thing that's sucking up all your mental energy, is when it was speculated as humans were evolving, and you'd be talking out loud to your tribe as language was developing, and then somebody said something but not out loud, and it was just in his head, and you'd be like, whoa, what the hell was that? Because we didn't evolve talking to ourselves. That was secondary. So you're making grunts with your vocal cords, and it turns into language, and then somebody realized they don't have to make the vocal sound, but they could do that just in their head. And that's and we started going down that path of only talking to ourselves with words, when just feeling the emotions of the thing is vastly more powerful. But converting that, your feelings and thoughts into words, language, sentences, is what's sucking up all your mental energy and keeping you from being creative or not being able to solve problems near instantly.
Amazing. That's something that I would personally like to explore more as an idea. You just made me think. So let's say that someone gets raised like Tarzan by animals, and he can't speak a language. Does he think? And if he thinks, In what way does he think? Because he can't communicate with words. Surely he must think, but it's intriguing. I will do some research on that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to meet a Tarzan who hasn't learned language. But yeah, so I still talk to myself, but as I'm exploring this myself, I'm doing it less and less and less and less and less. And I find, like, if I go for a walk and I realize that I'm talking to myself, I'm learning more and more, and it's a skill to quiet down more and more. And what you end up doing, you get into that meditative state, but you're there all the time, and it's just quiet. It's quiet up there, unless I have to solve a problem, a specific problem. Then I'll kick in I put the brain in gear instead of it just going bzzz, and it's I don't really get tired.
Mm-hmm. Do you meditate still? Do you practice meditation?
Yeah.
Is that on a daily basis, like just put your noise cancelling headphones and go away?
I do, like, any time, anything that appeals to me at the time, like guided meditations. I find something on YouTube.
Yeah.
But and this is another thing that has been super key. I made a list of characteristics that I'd like to be or have. Like I've got it written on my wall, like a leader, clever, radiant, effective. And I will write on a piece of paper, in just original script, and maybe make some little sparks, make it look original, like different colored markers. And I'll tape it to the wall, and I'll pull up a chair, and I will meditate to that word or that concept. And so I'm thinking of like I have written on the wall, peace. So then I'm meditating on the concept of peace for half an hour, 25 minutes. And then that is the theme for my day. So today, because today's theme is peace. So as I go outside, I will be letting the universe, or my mind is already primed to the idea of just being peace or peaceful or at ease. So I do that every day, and every day is a different characteristic.
That's very interesting. That's another thing that I made a note to practice it myself and see how it feels, because I think sometimes just giving yourself the time, the 20 minutes or something, to really let your mind drift into thinking about a concept is it's very useful.
Yeah, and it really primes the day for whatever that thing is. Unless, say if you were to be in the habit of waking up in the morning and like, oh, it's another day, I have to go to work. You've just primed yourself to, being resistant to going to work. But, you could just as easily prime yourself to like, this is going to be the best day ever. Mm-hmm. Which do you think would be better to have to, you're either going to be the victim or you set the stage for, a great day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Steve, is there any major aha moment you had over the last year or so that you wanted to share?
Probably the concept of problems. I would, and I don't really have any way to calculate this, but I think most of the problems we have are only because we get stuck in a thought loop about them. Say it's raining and I already have a preconceived idea that I don't like rain. Mm-hmm. So now I have a problem. But, water falling from the sky shouldn't really be a problem, right? It's not a problem. It's water and it falls from the sky. Yeah. So it's all about the opinions and past decisions that we've made. And now we've got something to base our thought loops on that really is just silly. So, just drop all that. It just simply doesn't matter.
That's great. Is there anything that you were hoping I would ask you and I completely missed it?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think so. Maybe. We've evolved to be more afraid of something, for survival reasons, right? Mm-hmm. There's a rustling in the bush and you're more likely to assume it's a poisonous snake than a rabbit, which could be food, right? So, and then we evolved with that apprehension of the unknown. That's why we our thoughts stay in the 90% thought safe zone instead of the 2% of getting out there. So it's the fear of going out into the unknown, right? And that's why we're so hesitant to start that new business or do something that you're not sure what's going to happen. But if you map out ahead of time what's going to happen, you're more than halfway there. So things like indecision just fall away. There's no reason I shouldn't call on that client because I've already mapped in my head what's going to happen. It may not happen, but at least you've made a road that you can drive down versus just staticky noise where you just have no idea what's 2 inches in front of you. So mapping out your future is just super critical.
Outstanding. Thank you. How can people connect with you, Steve, and find out more about you?
We have a website.
Mm-hmm.
So both the app and the book are on our website. It's called thenudge.club. It's unusual. Most people have .com. We have .club.
Okay.
So www.thenudge.club.
Sure. And so that's where people will find out your contact details, etc., email, etc. That's brilliant.
Excellent.
Steve, I want to thank you very much for our conversation today. I find it intriguing, and I personally took quite a few insights and nuggets of wisdom from it. And I'm sure that, and I always say that if the listener just picks one thing out of everything and takes action on it and in a way that they can improve their lives, that for me is my mission is accomplished. I have really served the purpose of doing that. And I think there are many insights like that throughout our conversation. So thank you very much for that. I want to wish you all the very best with your life, with your business, and with your book launch. Any parting words?
Thank you very much for your time. I love what you're doing, and what a great thing. Everything's great.
Thank you very much for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review Personal Development Mastery on Apple Podcasts. If you want to know more about me and how I can help you, join my Facebook group Personal Development Mastery. You can either search for it on Facebook or you can simply type bit.ly/PDM group. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.